Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we are going to be talking about what's next for Manny Pacquiao. Before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, so it is August 23rd. 2 days ago, we just saw the fight ramp up between Manny Pacquiao and Yordenis Ugas. And let me say before anything else, that was actually a pretty entertaining fight. I enjoyed watching it. But man, we all eventually knew this day was coming. We all eventually knew that Manny Pacquiao was going to get old. There's a saying in sports, but particularly in the fight game, Father Time is undefeated. There's a reason that saying exists. You stick around long enough, it doesn't matter how high your skill level is, eventually you are going to start to decline. And if you continue to fight against top-level talent, one of these days you're going to end up getting beat. That day came for Manny Pacquiao on August 21st against Yordenis Ugas. I also want to mention one other thing. They say that every great fighter has one last great fight in him. Hindsight's 2020, and I think that looking back, we're going to end up saying that fight for Manny Pacquiao was against Keith Thurman. That was the fight where he pulled it out, and he one last time showed his greatness by getting that victory. But against Ugas, it was interesting. It was interesting. He's still a very good fighter. He still could beat a lot of guys at 147 pounds. One of the things he said in the post-fight interview, he said, my mind is still in it 100%. My heart's in it 100%. And when he came out there, that's how it looked. I gave him four of the first 5 rounds, 4 of the first 6 rounds, something along those lines. He came in, he was still fighting hard. He still got the fast hands. He still got power. He still got the will and the determination to make it all happen. But you could see it with his legs being gone. Manny Pacquiao becomes a lot more normal, a lot more average. Without having his legs there, without having the footwork. That's what made him great. That's what made him so special. The ability to move around, go in and out, just explode with that athleticism and those fast twitch muscle fibers, the way he's able to cut those angles, the lateral movement. All of that was nullified with his legs being dead. I know he mentioned it in the second round, after the second round in his corner, of how his legs were feeling. I guess ultimately the question becomes, how did he really look in training camp? How did he really feel coming into this? He said maybe he thought it was because he overtrained, but how did he look going in? Did we already start to see those signs of decline? I thought we could definitely see it in past fights, that he was starting to slow down, that he was starting to use less movement, even that his cardio was getting affected a little bit later on in the fight. So I would think that's a natural decline. I wouldn't think to me that he just overtrained for this fight or something along those lines. To me, it all makes sense. The man's 42 years old. Fighters appear to become old overnight. But that's because the sample size we get from him is so small. You look at a basketball player, a football player, a baseball player, we see these guys compete so much more frequently that when their decline comes from age, it seems much more gradual. We're seeing them compete 16 times, 20 times, 80 times, 100 times a year. Whatever it is, depending on the sport that they play. We can see these guys out there competing very frequently. But when you look at fighters, we're seeing them 2 times a year, 3 times a year maybe. And with Manny Pacquiao, it's been a longer layoff than that this time. So it's not a surprise that all of a sudden he comes out there and all of a sudden his legs just look shot, just looks dead, can't get that angle, can't counter the jab the way that he would used to, and being able to gauge that distance. And man, talk about that jab. That jab for Ugas was something else. No tell on it, throwing it out there smooth. Pacquiao was frustrating himself with his inability to nullify that jab. I got to be honest, if at this point in his career, I'm someone who's close to Pacquiao, I'm looking at him, I'm going to tell him, champ, I think it's time to hang it up. I think it's time to walk away from this sport. One of the things that Manny Pacquiao mentioned in his post-fight interview, he said, I've got things, a lot bigger challenges than boxing going on in my life. This man is potentially going to make a run for president of the Philippines. One of the things that people always say to athletes is they have to have something going on outside of the sport so that when they retire, they've got more going on in their life and they don't just sit there and constantly miss it. Wallow in their despair and just constantly wish that they were still involved with it. There is nothing bigger than potentially running for president of the Philippines. I can't think of more going on for a fighter than what Manny Pacquiao has going on in his life. So his time will definitely be filled up. And as much as he's a fighter at his heart, as much as he'll miss it, I think now's the time to walk away from it. He sticks around too long. He ends up taking a beating. He ends up getting beat by somebody who's much lesser than. And his legacy is completely intact. First ballot Hall of Famer. But still, you never want to see that happen to a man of that caliber. You never want to see it go down that way. Based on what we saw from him against Yordenis Ugas, I'm thinking it's time for Manny to hang it up. But let me know what you guys think. We jumping the gun a little bit on this one. Does he still have some greatness left in him? Should we see him compete one more time? Or is now the time for him to walk away into the sunset? Let me know what you guys think.